This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
The Saturday Down South national columnist Connor O'Gara joining us here for his usual hit on a Monday afternoon. Connor, a pretty wild Saturday of college football. There's a lot to make sense of. Have you made sense of all of it yet?
I've tried. I don't think I've fully been able to make sense of everything, but I'm doing my best. I'm trying to figure out where exactly those Tennessee goalposts have gone, if they are still indeed in the Tennessee River. There are a lot of questions I'm still asking on this Monday afternoon.
Have you made your donation for the Tennessee Goalpost Fund yet? They apparently don't have enough money to purchase a goalpost, but they do have enough money to cover a $250,000 fine.
It's pretty amazing to think that one could have, what do they have, like 102,000 fans in the stadium, and they come up with that tweet. Like, of all the things that you can do to capitalize on that moment, which Tennessee did a lot of those things, I thought playing Dixieland Delight in the wake of that victory was an all-time move. I think being able to kind of turn a blind eye to roughly, 101,000 cigars so that they could get into the stadium, a great move, smart self-awareness there. But to fire off that tweet to me was just baffling. I mean, you could pay for that with money that your NIL quarterback, Nico, I still can't pronounce his last name, who's coming in the 2023 class. You could pay for that with what he's being able to get there in NIL funds. So, yeah, just a strange move, lack of self-awareness on that one.
Well, it'd be hard-pressed to find another game across the entire college football schedule for all of the season that would be more entertaining, I imagine, than Tennessee's win over Alabama. I think last year, Arkansas, Ole Miss got top billing, but that didn't have the national implications that this win for Tennessee had over Alabama. And it had it all, man. I mean, it really had it all. Tons of passing yards, big plays, both teams a chance to get a field goal near the end of it, and the goalposts at the end were just sort of the cherry on the top. So, and I guess what stands out is Alabama really kind of killed themselves with 17 penalties. That was a huge part of it, too.
It was, and I know there are a lot of Alabama fans who are frustrated with the penalties that were called. I don't think they're going to get a whole lot of sympathy from the rest of the SEC on that department. But, at the same time, I mean, let's not diminish what exactly Tennessee did to set themselves up to put up 52 points against Alabama, something that hadn't been done in 115 years. To see that kind of offensive output was just stunning. I mean, this is a Tennessee team that I think coming into the year, a lot of people were like, all right, yeah, we know offensively they're going to be really good. But if you had told me that they were going to be without Cedric Tillman in this game and they were still going to put up 52 points and that Jalen Hyatt was going to do his best Justin Jefferson 2019 Peach Bowl imitation, I would have said, you're crazy. There's no way. And I was high on Tennessee coming into this year. But, man, I just continue to be blown away by what Josh Heupel, Alex Golesh have done with this offense to transform that personnel, which looked like it was left for dead in the wake of the Jeremy Pruitt fallout. It's just an unbelievable thing to process. I mean, we're talking about Tennessee potentially having the National Coach of the Year. Hendon Hooker is not necessarily the favorite for the Heisman Trophy in betting odds, but he's close to it. And I could make a really good case that Tennessee deserves to be the number one team in college football right now in the middle of year 2 of the Josh Heupel era. It's baffling. It's truly hard to process.
This happened so quickly. But, I mean, I can't ask, are we supposed to get used to total turnarounds like this because of the era of the transfer portal? But it is mind-blowing. You had Arkansas win 3 games in 2020, 9 games the year after. We'll see what happens in year 3. But, Tennessee also won 3 games in 2020, and now they're top 4, and they're just steamrolling towards what looks like an inevitable battle for the division with Georgia in a few weeks.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. If you're not using the transfer portal, which a lot of people have criticized Dabo Swinney, his lack of of adjustments that he has made to be able to say we need to fill certain things on our roster with the transfer portal. If you're not using it, you're hurting yourself. And Tennessee's the perfect example of why you should be using it, because Hendon Hooker committed to Jeremy Pruitt. He didn't even commit to Josh Heupel. He stayed with Josh Heupel, and he even stayed with Josh Heupel after he inexplicably named Joe Milton his QB1 to open last season. And Brew McCoy, a guy who, everybody was talking about for the first 3 years of his career for him not playing, and this back and forth with USC and Texas, and didn't even find out that he was going to be eligible until August 26th. And he makes, in my opinion, the biggest play of that game, the 27-yard catch that sets up Chase McGrath for the game-winning field goal. And you're looking around going, this is why you make moves like that. And you have to be agile. You have to be willing to assess your needs. And Tennessee did that in an extraordinary way. And now suddenly it has personnel that looks like it was just born to fit that system.
Well, did you get a chance to have your eyes on Arkansas and BYU? I'm sure that one played out exactly the way you thought, because here I was all week. We're like, yeah, they're just going to run it right down BYU's throat. And they did. But first, they just threw it all around the yard with KJ back, and Matt Landers had his best game as a Razorback. Maybe the Arkansas passing attack can stay open, just like Sam Pittman wanted it to go. He talked about it all week. Did Saturday's game against BYU change any of your thoughts after a 3-game losing streak for the Razorbacks?
It did, and of course I had it streaming. While I had Alabama and Tennessee on the main TV, I had Arkansas, BYU streaming, because I'm not going to miss a chance to look at those mountains. I spent some time out in Utah. I spent a week in Utah this summer, man. Unbelievable place. I mean, truly unbelievable. You see the scenery. It's incredible. It's almost like KJ said, he went full Uncle Rico in this game. It's like, I'm going to throw the football over those mountains, except he was more accurate. I mean, I thought him working the middle of the field was the difference in that game. And that was the big issue coming in, is this lack of trust with the receivers and trusting that they're going to be able to scheme guys open. And you really saw the passing game, I think, turn a new leaf. And that was important, because you knew that Kendall Briles did not want to have to run KJ 15 to 20 times in that game. Coming off of the head injury, you need him to go. You just do. And so for him to show that toughness, the way that he did, escaping, 4 different guys, I mean, grown man strength to be able to make that play and to find Trey Knox on the move. I was just really impressed by KJ. His response after sitting out a week, after hearing all the criticism about the passing game, it just, to me, showed why not everybody is built like him. And I think Arkansas moving forward is going to be in good shape, even though they do have, obviously, still the issues with the defense.
Well, their next game is Auburn, and Auburn gets a much-needed bye week. I'd say it's a much-needed bye week for the Razorbacks, too, with as many injuries as they've got in the secondary. Auburn hung with Ole Miss. It looked early like they might get blown out, but they did hang with them. And, I mean, at least they're handing it to Tank Bigsby, but it's not a team that can move the ball through the air very much. But, I mean, I would expect that on the Plains and a couple of the Saturdays at 11 in the morning on SEC Network, we're going to see 2 teams that are going to try to run the ball down each other's throats. The only difference is Arkansas actually can throw the ball.
Yeah, look, Auburn can't stop the run. I mean, they don't have a chance to stop the run. They have not shown any ability to do that whatsoever. Ole Miss had 3 different guys reach the century mark in that game. I mean, they had 69 rushes for 448 yards. I mean, so as great as it was to see Auburn actually show a little bit of fight, some offensive life in that game, and you see Robbie Ashford, Tank Bigsby get into it on the sideline when it's a 21-7 game, and you're kind of like, all right, I don't know what's really going to come of this, but Auburn looked pretty decent offensively against an Ole Miss defense that's been better than what I thought they were going to be coming into this year. But at the same time, this still should set up well for Arkansas to be able to run the football. And if they're going to have balance coming off of the bye week after what looked like a really promising showing in the passing game, then I tend to think that this favors Arkansas in this matchup. Obviously, they'd love to be able to avenge last year's loss, the way that played out. I mean, up until Saturday, that was the last time we really saw any sort of offensive pulse from Auburn. It was this game last year that Arkansas lost. So I think that this still should set up really well, and I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you're feeling a lot better going into the bye than what we could have been talking about.
Connor, Matt Jones here. I was going to ask you the top five. So who would be your top five SEC teams right now? You said Tennessee was number one for you, and they just beat Alabama. So do you have Georgia at two, or how would you rank the top five right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'd still probably – you know what? I'd go Tennessee because I said coming into the year I thought Tennessee was going to beat Georgia, and nothing so far has told me that I'm going to be wrong about that necessarily. So, yeah, I mean, I think you would have to put Tennessee there, and I'd put Georgia at 2, Alabama at 3. They got to work through those defensive issues, the discipline issues that they've had with penalties in these true road games. But then, number 4 is really difficult. It is. I think I'd probably still go with Ole Miss just because I think what they've shown in the ground game, I mean, they might be one-dimensional, but their one dimension is second to none. I mean, what they're doing with Quinshon Judkins and Zach Evans in the ground game is remarkable. And then after that, man, it is a toss-up. It really is. I think you got to lean Kentucky. I think I'd go Kentucky for that number 5 spot just because, what they did against Mississippi State, like Mississippi State was rolling, and they completely stymied Will Rogers in that game. He had 3.9 yards per attempt in the first half of that game. And that was a year after he completed all but 3 of his 39 passes against Kentucky. So, yeah, I like the Cats still with Will Levis healthy. I think I'd give them the edge for that number 5 spot.
I agree that we were talking about that earlier with that Kentucky defense is real, man. And that usually when Kentucky has a defense, they'll be pretty good. Yeah,
I agree. They have some 2018 vibes to them. I mean, they play their tails off too. Like they've had issues in the front 7 with injuries. It doesn't really look like it. I mean, even against we talked a lot about Ole Miss and that rushing attack, and I'm sure Arkansas fans will have plenty of scouting to do to see what exactly they're in for. In that matchup coming up here, but I still think that this is still a Kentucky defense that, to me, I think what they have done so incredibly well is make those game adjustments with Mark Stoops. I mean, what they did at Florida in the Swamp after it looked like Anthony Richardson, everybody's talking about Heisman with his performance against Utah. They just totally contained him in that one. And I've been really impressed with the way that they've been able to kind of keep them in some of these games. I don't really put the South Carolina loss on them, a game in which they didn't have Will Levis. But, yeah, Kentucky's defense is legit. It's one of the better units in the SEC.
Well, Connor, you brought up Ole Miss, and I don't think you'd mentioned LSU, but these are two teams that we're really about to find out, how good they are because of what they've got ahead of them. Arkansas's got their toughest games behind them now. So then it's not like you got cupcakes for the next 5 games, but this 3-game stretch really looked like it was the toughest of the year for Arkansas. LSU, they got Ole Miss, then Alabama, then they travel to Fayetteville. I don't care too much about Alabama, Birmingham. Then they go to A&M, and the series with LSU and A&M is nuts. Ole Miss, really, a win over Kentucky, I think, is impressive. But outside of that, they haven't played anybody. And they got LSU and A&M on the road, then Alabama, then Ole Miss comes to Fayetteville, and then the Egg Bowl. So, we'll find out what these two teams are all about. I guess I would expect Ole Miss to hang a little more than LSU, but, LSU winning in Florida, that was an impressive win, too.
The question with LSU is, did they turn the corner with their passing game? They've had very well-documented issues with Jaden Daniels trusting those receivers. Group of receivers that might be the best in the SEC when healthy, although I think Tennessee has kind of taken that title all to themselves. But I think that's the big question that we have moving forward, because against Florida, man, they look good. They took whatever they wanted in that game. And Kayshon Boutte, when he is involved and engaged in a game plan like that, as Brian Kelly said afterwards, they're a different team. So, yeah, they have their fair share of issues. They're not going to beat you with the ground game and necessarily dominate you in that regard. But I still think that LSU is going to be just a scary team to play down the stretch. They've already got those 2 losses, so it's kind of like nothing to lose. You don't have a coach on the hot seat, so you don't have guys that are playing tight necessarily. I think LSU is going to be one of those teams that could just be a wild card week to week, because even quarter to quarter, man, they can be kind of all over the place. So that's a team that's going to be really difficult to play for 60 minutes.
Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.